you to this capacity building workshop on storytelling. I am incredibly honored to be able to work with you this afternoon. This lies very close to my own heart since I have been involved in the Europa Canton Utrecht Festival 10 years ago, working in the music office, and now, also thanks to Daphne and of course Sonja and the entire organization, I am happy to present this workshop to you. My name is Yvette van den Berg, it's me, and you will also have contributions in this workshop by Gerard Salma, who is sitting at the window, and Sonja, who you may have seen before. The aim of this workshop is to give you some tools to really start storytelling, to be able to convey, maybe in a different way than you've been used to, who you are and what it is that you do. And I would of course like to introduce myself with a short story of my own. And for that I would like to take you back to an evening in 2013 when I just came home from my first day of training to become a chief storyteller. I'm studying at the Storytelling Academy, and at the end of this first day we were given an assignment. And the assignment was, prepare for tomorrow the story of who you are and start at the roots. Now that might sound simple, but I sort of panicked in the train back home. Because I thought, oh, I can tell them who I am. I can tell you my name and when I was born and what was my profession. I can tell you all those things. But the story that starts at the roots of me, this to me was a bit of a problem. Because when I thought of roots, I thought of the beginning of your life, right? The start of your life. I didn't particularly have the most easy start in life. This may be recognizable for many people. In my case, when I was 4 years old, my parents got divorced, and after that, I'd grown up in a situation with quite some violence around me and in my own home. So this, to me, was not the most pleasant assignment that I ever got. Start at the roots. So I had my train ride home, thinking maybe when I arrive home, cup of tea, bit of food, all will be fine. But 4.5 hours later, I found myself still sitting on my couch with my cold cup of tea staring at a blank screen. There was absolutely nothing. So then I did what I do often when I have absolutely nothing. I started to randomly Google things. This is what we do, right? My generation just randomly start scrolling the internet. So that's what I did. And I was, in the meantime, still thinking, story roots. And with all this thinking about stories and roots, I found myself on a website on trees. Because that's also roots. When you start typing roots on Google, you get things on trees. Well, didn't have anything to do with my assignment, but it was fascinating. And I learned so much about trees that evening. And there was one tree that fascinated me the most of all, was this one. Yes. This is a yew tree. Yew tree. And this particular yew tree, if by the way at any moment you cannot see either the screen or the flip over, just feel free to move. You're not a tree, so you can move. This is a yew tree. This particular yew tree stands in the middle of Scotland, in the exact center. Do you have any Scots in the room? And it's in a graveyard, and this tree is at least 3,000 years old. But some even say it goes back to 5,000 years, this tree. It is, from what we know, the oldest still living thing on this earth. It's this yew tree. Wow. So this is a survival tree, this is a strong tree. And then I read on about the yew tree. Do you know anything about the yew tree? Fascinating. It is a magical tree. Not only in the physical, because it always stays green, also during winter, just green, just stays green. But also in a lot of cultures and religions, really magical elements have been put on this tree. For instance, when you sit beneath a yew tree, you immediately feel calmed down. It's a very calming tree. And in both Christian cultures, but also shamans, they sit underneath a yew tree to be able to be more open to the divine. They can see more people. They can see into different worlds, different realms, different forms of intelligence when they sit beneath a yew tree. Then there's also legend and folklore, of course. So medicine wheels are made of yew wood. Witches fly on broomsticks made of yew tree because the wood of yew tree is what makes it able to fly. Healing dawns, all made of the yew. And then I was reading all of this, thinking it must be incredible to be a tree like this. To be a survivor for 3,000 years. To be this magical thing that can bring healing to people and that can provide them with being a tool for them to even see into different worlds and different realms. What it must be like to be a yew tree. Well, clearly I wasn't a yew tree. I was a girl sitting around midnight with still an empty laptop screen, some cold tea, and an assignment that was due in the morning. So I panicked some more to find something, but the yew tree gave me an idea. Because remember me saying that this yew tree always stays green? It always has green leaves and red berries. They are, by the way, poisonous. So it's not all fun and games, this tree. Do not eat the berries. And that combination, red and green, did something to me. And I thought, oh, I have red hair and green eyes. That is also sort of roots, right? Because it has always been there. It was there at the start of my life. And then I thought, okay, what else was there already at the start of my life? And I thought of my name. My name was there from the very start, Yvette. And I realized I had actually never looked up what the name Yvette means. So I Googled it, because I was Googling anyway. Yvette, name, meaning, send, and then my jaw dropped. Because the name Yvette showed up on my screen with the meaning, yew tree. And that was the moment where I realized, wow, so I am somebody who can have all these magical elements also in myself. Maybe I can provide people with a sense of calm and a sense of healing. Maybe I can be a tool to help them see into other worlds and realms. And to this day, I like to think that that is what I do with storytelling, is provide people a sense of their own stories, which gives, in my opinion, a great sense of feeling more calm and grounded in yourself and who you are and what you do, but also as a means to open up new worlds that maybe were closed off before. Second thing I learned that evening is a very important thing. When somebody asks me the question of who are you and what is it that you do, and maybe you recognize this, I thought it had to be the whole story. I thought I had to start with who I am, where I came from, how it came to be, which people I encountered and worked with, what were the dates, what were the facts, what were the figures, and then it led up to me being all of this now. Is this something you recognize? When you try to convey the message of your organization or of yourself, of who you are and what you do, then it becomes this whole story. I see some. That's good, because in this workshop, I will try to let you experience the same thing I had that night with you, which is that your story is something different than only information. It means giving people an experience, just like you maybe now had one, when I came to my conclusion of the yew tree. It was not how, that's fine. It does something. And that's the start of opening the whole world. To add to this, sometimes we have no idea what our story will do to somebody else. That also asks a bit of vulnerability. Because I actually didn't tell you now anything about my background, about all the things that I can do, about how great I am. I didn't. I told you a story that was actually very small. And now I have to trust that that story did enough to you to think, oh, I will listen to this person and to this workshop. And in the beginning it can feel a bit uncomfortable, but that is exactly what we will work on today, is to find, instead of all the information, and I'm going to give you a frame on how to cram in all that information into, it's not going to work. I am here to help, hopefully, help you become aware of the stories that are right in front of you, that may feel very small, like a story about my name and a yew tree, but that actually say so much. So that's what I like to do today. Into a real story. Well, this is also a real story, but into a real story on your field, something that you may recognize. I would like to ask Sonja to tell us a little bit of the founding story of the European Choral Association.
It's interesting because actually what Yvette just said, when I started dealing with the history of the European Choral Association of the Cantat, I realized that I could tell part of the history by telling my own history and by talking about my own roots, because I have a French mother and a German father, and they got married in 1959, which for some of you is an awful long time ago. And what is important to know is that getting married in 1959 as a German and a French was actually a huge issue. And it was even more huge because my mother's family was from a Jewish background. So part of her family decided to stop communication with her because she married a German. And I only learned, and then I was born in 1962, and our European Choral Association, or rather the previous association called the European Federation of Young Choirs, and then Europa Cantat, was founded informally in 1960 and formally in 1963, so in the same time, which made me realize how special it was that French and German people got together in the 50s to set up something together, even though they had been in the war just before. And it was actually in Utrecht, so that's the second connection I found, that I decided for the first time to tell the story of the origins of the Federation in a team meeting. And it was the first time I felt what power you can have in storytelling, in moving your audience, which was not so clear to me before, until I realized people started crying because I was saying something and it felt a bit frightening. But I decided to use it anyway because I think it's a good example. So what I discovered when I started looking into the history, and I should say that because I was only born in '62, but I knew personally the generation of the founders of this association, so I know the people I'm going to talk about. And searching the history, I found out that there was a French conductor who was blind, and I knew him personally as well. And he discovered in the preparations for the first festival in 1961 that one of the main German conductors who was in the group of people who were founding the associations had also been a soldier in the war, as Roger had been, and Roger was blinded in the war. And suddenly, while they were sitting there together, they said, oh my God, it could have been that we were on the two sides of the border, and that it was actually this German conductor who shot and damaged the eyes of the French conductor. We were sitting there together and saying, oh, the German conductor said, and I'm going to read that in German, because he said, plötzlich ergleichte Gottfried Wolters und rief erschreckt aus, oh mein Gott, ich könnte es gewesen sein, der dir das Augenlicht genommen hat. So he said, oh my God, I could have been the one who blinded you in the war. Darauf folgte eine beklemmende Stille. Niemand wusste, wie man darauf reagieren soll. Dann standen die beiden Betroffenen auf, gingen um den Tisch herum, bis sie sich gegenüberstanden und mit Tränen in den Augen umarmten sie sich stillschweigend. So after that, first there was a silence. Even I have to fight tears when I tell that. And then they got up, went around the table and hugged each other. And it was a very strong act. And actually the French guy, Roger Motz, also says afterwards, when we met for the first time, we discovered this and then we drank a lot. And then we decided not to look back anymore, but to look forward and to make things better so this would not happen anymore. And it is with this message that Roger Motz and Gottfried Wolters went on stage at the first Europa Cantat Festival and told, can you just give it back please? Told the story to thousands of young people in the hall, and they told the young people, look, we might have been fighting each other in the war, one of us might have blinded the other one, but we decided to change the future, and that's why we're here together. And I found a recording, with which I would like to finish this part, of the concert, the closing concert of the first Europa Cantat Festival. It was recorded by WDR. And the moderator tells in German, but I think it's still nice and many of you understand German, he tells how the last concert of the first Propaganda Festival ended. They all sang Dona Nobis Pacem together, after having heard the stories as well, and then there was no applause. The whole hall decided, as a whole, not to applaud, but to simply get up and leave the hall on the words of Dona Nobis Pacem, because of the history they had been told. So I will let you listen to this little story and let her continue.
Roger Motz, ein blinder Chorsänger aus Paris, wird auf das Podium geführt. Er übersetzt die Worte des Dankes, die Gottfried Wolters in französischer Sprache stellvertretend für alle sagt. Danach wird der Kanon Da Pacem Domine, Gib Frieden, Herr, gesungen. Und dann geschieht etwas, das wohl immer im Gedächtnis aller Teilnehmer haften wird. Niemand klatscht. 2000 junge Menschen verlassen schweigend die große Halle. Europa Cantat 1961 in Passau ist zu Ende.
Now I, of course, listen also to what Sonja is telling you with my storytelling hat on. Did you all notice, for instance, that when the phrase came up and then we drank a lot, that we all laughed, we all felt something? These are things that probably up until this moment, I'm generalizing a bit, I realize, but they didn't come to mind yet to put in such small notions, details, to get so personal in telling your official story of who you are and what you do. Yet this is exactly the level that on this workshop I will be putting you a bit more towards, so that you can really get a feeling of how to build a story that is so, let's call it small, but very big in impact, small and personal, which can convey an experience. Now, I've been walking around here the last couple of days just eavesdropping. So if you thought you saw someone lurking and eavesdropping, that was me, probably. To just collect, what are you saying to each other? And there's two things that I noticed. One is that everybody talks in story. You did it probably now at lunch. You sit together and you say, oh, by the way, you know what I did last week? It's a story. That's just a once upon a time in modern day word. Do you know who I spoke to? Oh, by the way, I'm so looking forward to tonight because it's all story. This is how we are hardwired. It's for story. So that's good. You all have a natural talent for storytelling. That will come in handy today. Number two is that I heard a lot people talking about how singing gives us a feeling, an experience. I even heard somebody say, I experienced this for the first time, this festival, this concert, and afterwards I said, why didn't anybody tell me about this? So good. Why didn't anybody tell me about this? And then the answer was, because you cannot tell about things like this, you have to experience it. And at first I nodded, yeah, I know the feeling. And then as a storyteller I said, it's not true, it's not true. You can talk about it, you just have to know how. Because just as singing conveys an experience, so does an actual story. Now, that suggests that there is a difference between giving out information and the story. Because why, if I tell my story of who I am, what it is that I do, where I come from, that everybody gets out their phones and starts Googling yew trees, and that when I start talking about this night in 2013 where I had to make an assignment, that everybody stays engaged. How does that work? Well, it has something to do with the brain. Maybe I will show some imaging about that later because it's interesting to know. But for now I would like to put you to a bit of work. My plenary question number one. For about a minute, collect answers to the question, why would you tell your story? So speak to each other. Why? What reasons would you have to tell your story? Because I like talking. Yes, good answer. Write it down. Never experienced that when I clap my hands it actually works. Thank you. Wow. Good. All right. going to write them all down. I don't know why I did this. I would like to hear from every group, just one person, take the lead, give me some of the things that were being said. I will talk to each group to maybe give some more reasons that were on your list but are not being said yet. And if you think, oh, interesting, you just write them all down so you have them for yourself. Here we go, start with this group. What were some reasons you came up with?
Communicate, encourage, motivate, like tell a story. You said.
Perfect. Perfect, because I love it.
Because I love
Entertainment. Really good one also. What is storytelling? Storytelling is entertainment. It always is. Good one. Nice, thank you. Okay. Were there any additions to this from your group?
Explain, excite, sell, give information, convince.
Thank you.
Well, because we want guys to become famous, to make people laugh, to explain exactly the story I want to tell about ourselves.
Thank you.
break the ice to get emotionally involved was very good. Just introduce yourself.
Did everybody hear that?
No.
Can you repeat it a little bit louder?
To break the ice, to make a difference, and to get emotionally involved.
Thank you. Any additions from the back? None? Everything was already said.
Yes, inviting people, sharing, explaining, making contacts, comments, and encourage.
Thank you. And last but not least.
Okay, so to add, we have to connect the set, to express something, to share the set. I need other people for pleasure, for friends and families. When I need support, and to convey a message.
Beautiful. Thank you. So why is it important to ask this question, and we will ask a couple more? It is because, most probably, every time you tell a story, you want to first be conscious of why am I actually telling this story? Does it have to convince somebody? Is it to break the ice with somebody? Is it to really give out information? Or is that less important than just to make a human connection? Maybe by specifying these reasons, you already start to see a little bit, so for one target audience, I have more reason to tell a story because I really need something from them. But for another target audience, I'm sharing a story because I want to keep them involved, or I want to make them feel good. That makes a difference for what kind of story you tell. So be conscious. Second question, what would you, and let's say that you now think from your organization or the purpose of why you came here, what story would you like to tell? And this is not an easy question, because your first reaction might be, the story that explains everything that I am and that I do. And no, so maybe there is a wrong answer in this round, after all. So that cannot be the answer, everything else is okay. 1 minute again, here we go. What story would you like to tell? What story can you tell? All right. Same round, but now I'm going to start here for diversity purposes. What story are you telling? A bullshitting story?
How I feel.
A story of how I feel.
Yeah. Why the organization is doing something.
Why the organization is doing something.
Why I am doing something.
Why I am doing something.
The power of networking.
What the powers of networking.
And what is my emergency topic? My urgent topic.
And what is my urgent topic? It's an urgent topic, that's the story I want to tell. Thank you. Oh, 1 minute. Wow.
It's the bullshitting group, so.
And do not ever underestimate the power of bullshitting. Okay. So, anything to add? Which stories?
Yes.
Okay. I will not repeat them all, by the way, so speak up and then.
What the story of other people who survive, what we are today, what choir is, what is our best practice, where we come from, our biggest challenge and strength at the sector.
I'd like to immediately make very explicit that all of these topics are one story each. And what are we most often trying to do? We're not going to do that anymore after today. Everything is one story. This is such important information. So if you would just run out after this and you take this with you, I'm already happy. Make one story at a time. The big advantage is that you can do that again the next day with your next thing, and the day after with your next thing, and the day. So you have content for a year instead of one story and then you're sort of didn't work. So that's good. Thank you very much.
Express our values, tell a story about our origins.
Louder, please.
Origins, tell that the Coral World is a family, and tell that the association is a community of people who want to contribute.
Beautiful. Again, one story each. Beautiful. Awesome. Yes, let's start now.
Yes, we want to tell a story. We want to tell a joke, a story about Granny and why she likes to go to choir. She started to going to choir.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am looking at just for, are there any, because I might imagine that Sonja will
think whom we reach or whom we want to reach, which might be two different stories, and whom we represent. And I think the others have most been said.
Thank you. All right.
Fun of art, emotional things, passion, the need and the values, projects, moving people and good feelings.
Just if you want to convey a story, emotions, just pick a story about your name in a yew tree. Done. We'll make it so much bigger than it needs to be, and we will be practicing with actually writing stories also in this workshop, so we're getting there. Last but not least.
The sensation of singing together, to share our experience and to inspire.
All great answers. Does this help already a bit? Is this already shifting some things within people? Very good. Now, next question, no coincidence. Who should tell that story? For instance, what did you say, the benefits of singing? What were the words again?
The
sensation.
sensation of singing.
The sensation of singing. Who should tell that story? Does it have to be you? Can it maybe be an actual one of your singers telling that story? Can it maybe be the neighbor of that singer who saw the neighbor being all sad? Let's say my own son, he's 8 years old and he struggles a little bit at school with finding friends and making connections. So he comes out of school a little bit, well, he's okay, because he likes school, he likes learning, but I as a mother, I can see people with children, they recognize this, you know, right? You know. And then I take him to his vocal class, where he sings with some other children. And he comes out of his vocal class. And I know what happened in there. I can see it. Does he need to tell the story, or can I maybe tell the story of the sensation of singing? So in 1 minute, who can you conjure up that might be able to tell your stories for you? 1 minute, go. The minute flies by. Okay, so I'm starting on this side again. Who can tell your story? Just short and sweet, go.
Students, family, and friends.
Students, family, friends, emotionally involved. People who are emotional. Anybody who is emotionally involved. This is also where Gerard will come in later, because then you have to know who is emotionally involved. How do you know? So this will be touched upon in our second part. Anything else?
Participants, grandmother, government.
Oh, this is great. This is great. Okay. Next group.
Volunteers from your organization, the public, your audience, the public, children, young people, and we also said the partners of the singers, or the widows, because they never see them.
This in itself is a story.
Yeah.
Can you please in the afternoon write out the story of the widows who never see you and just put it out on social media? Here you go. This is how easy it can be. Thank you.
Nice expression.
Mother, family, best friends, co-workers, choral colleagues.
Thank you. Any additions?
Yes, I had people who won grants or scholarships from us, and non-musicians, and famous people.
Oh, yeah. Good, huh? It's great. Yeah.
We had an interesting machine or art object, so this was something completely different.
Nice.
And then participants and members witness. And a wise person, that's right.
Beautiful. Sometimes the flip over in a room can tell the story of what happened there. It's so interesting to realize all the perspectives you can take. Who am I going to let this story be told with? Beautiful, thank you.
Donors, children, elderly or seniors, the audience, musicians, association leaders, influencers, someone whose life has changed with singing in a choir, and press people.
Thank you.
We have only one to add, which are politicians.
Politicians. All really good answers. We move on. To whom can you tell your stories? Be as specific as you can. To potential new members, to the press, to the parents of my children in my choir. To be as specific as you can be in 1 minute. Go. All right. To whom?
Government, bullshit stories. Non-believers, journalists, potential sponsors, to whom who are in doubt. Singers, family, audience, young generation.
Thank you. Anything to add to that list?
We have non-singers, politicians, press, people who needs singing. I can use that in difficult situation, struggling people, partners, widows, sponsors, and friends.
Thank you.
And everyone.
Yes, you know, the thing is, why I'm asking this question is because if you are telling the same story to everyone, something is going wrong. It cannot be that you tell the same story to everyone because everybody listens through a different frame. And the more specific you are about this is the person that I'm going to tell this story to, the more naturally you connect with this person and the greater the impact. But you've already seen that stories are much smaller than you may have thought. So now instead of sweating for a week on one story to send to everybody, that is perfect, you can say, I'm going to write a story to these people, to these people, to these, and to these. For them, I'm picking my name in a yew tree. For them, I am picking my last project, showing them how well it went. For these, I'm picking, you make a small story, out you go. You still work for 7 days, but you made 7 stories instead of 1, and everybody will be touched more deeply. So this is important, to make the extinction. And in the end, of course, we all agree everybody needs to hear this. But before you start storytelling, make sure you just be mindful of all these steps, this information. Right? Okay, in the back.
We want to storytell to our mothers, families, close friends, colleagues, closer and more out, not reachable colleagues. Okay? That's us.
Thank you. Looking all the way to the back. Any additions?
I think because the story I told today, I told it to volunteers and so to the team of an event. And also I would tell a story to the musicians that I involve in an event. And the parents of potential singers for children's choirs or youth choirs.
Thank you.
We again have some really nice answers. We started with walls. And then a lot of other things came up, but also aliens. And that's at least yourself.
Beautiful, thank you. Yes. Because there is, of course, the stories that you all tell yourselves about who you are, about what you do, about who you. And it is also very useful to sometimes say, well, is that actually true? Is that also actually how others perceive it? The way I tell my story? And again, it comes Gerard in the afternoon to say something about measuring, and please just correct me when I'm wrong, but this is useful to do. And maybe changing the story you tell yourself brings in a whole new area of storytelling you're going to do to the outside world. Also, what I like about your group is you say, well, we had some interesting answers. It can, in fact, be very helpful to think something completely ridiculous, like what if I had to explain this to an alien? What would I say then? And then you think, now I am most definitely gone nuts because I'm writing a story for an alien. But in actual, my best stories came when I decided to write the story to my neighbor's dog, for instance. Just because it pulled me out of the frames I had already been working with for so long. It brings in something new. So it's everything that's being said here is great. Great, thank you.
Okay, in addition, decision makers, membership and members, other associations, potential partners, people in need for help.
Thank you.
We separate fund givers and politicians there, I'm just adding. The persons I love, neighbors, someone I don't know and someone who doesn't know me. And that's the additions.
Thank you. All right. Last one for now. How? And I don't mean how technically, no, beginning, middle, end. We will get to that. But how as in through which platforms? Newsletters, the different types of social media, press releases, video, through other art forms, through CD.
Slower.
1 minute, go. Let's see what you came up with in 1 minute. So I will start in the middle.
Shouting on the street.
Shouting on the street.
Pictures or artworks. And performing on stage.
Thank you. Additions on the left.
Speech, newsletter, social media, graphical memes, pictures, videos, music, sound, singing, shocking, articles, graffiti, newspapers, and all papers.
Thank you.
We're going to add gesture or acting, interpretive dance, public declaration, protest, handwritten letters, whisper.
Thank you. I look all the way to the back. Any additions?
Testimonials and quotes. I don't know if this was said already.
Testimonials and quotes.
And maybe presentations at conferences.
Thank you. Any additions?
Videos, art concepts and shows through some video games, also street art workshops.
Thank you.
Told stories, CVs, email, newsletter, pictures, songs, program booklets.
Thank you.
Singing. Face to face.
Face to face. Oh, right. We have such a thing as face to face.
What's that?
What's that?
I remember something like it, but please do not underestimate the effect of being face to face with someone and not launching into your information but telling them the story. You have no idea the impact, so thank you.
Surprising people like flash mob and so on. Twitter, phone calls, messaging about it.
I can make it by saying nothing, by doing nothing.
Sometimes you tell a story by saying nothing. All great answers, so just keep them all with you. And every time you walk through these questions, why am I going to tell a story now? What actually shall I then pick? Should it be some history or should it be some story about a yew tree? Who is going to tell that story? Do I have to do it with somebody else? To whom exactly is this story? And then which platform, which way, which form, which format am I going to choose to actually tell this story with? It might. So far so good? Questions? No? Okay. Then Sonja is going to show us actually a beautiful example of telling your story with the help of video.
facts, and we will talk about that as well. But I found it interesting for myself. Okay, I get the information, we have 22 nationalities in this group, but the effect of the children saying where they're from is quite different from this abstract figure. And for us, what was the most surprising was actually that we were dealing with migrants, and we each from our own country have an idea of who we think are the migrant groups. And in this example, actually, the migrant nationalities were not at all the migrant nationalities we had in mind when we started talking about the project. And the simple fact of the children only saying their nationalities already had this effect. And then the way the children describe what the project means to them, I think that's much stronger than if the director was using the same words. So that's why I thought it might be a nice example of how it gets audit.
Now I can imagine that the thought popped up with a project like this, but it is in fact a project. It's quite something to start a video project. And that might be. So what I like to do today is to present you with a basic structure for stories that will help you, hopefully, to be able to already start telling stories differently, or maybe for the first time, if it is completely new to you, as soon as you walk out this door after this workshop. You don't need any equipment for it, you don't need projects, you don't need budget. You have yourself, you have a pen, and all kinds of ways to get a story out there. For instance, face-to-face, or through a social media platform, a newsletter, an email. You have the means, and I would like now to provide you with a tool that I call the lifesaver of storytelling. Now, when I first was introduced to storytelling, it was a study program, a basic study program, lasted for 32 hours. We have 2.5, with a break in between. So as you might understand, I'm going to give you a tip of the iceberg. And there is lots more to say about all of this, but this is the one I call the lifesaver for a reason. And I have named it the sweep structure. It is not necessarily the best word, but it does remember easily. Sweep. And it contains of 3 parts: the S part, the we part, and the P part. I didn't speak that out loud yet in English, but I realize now SWEEP is, yeah, you will not ever forget this anymore. Neither will I. So, what we are going to do is build up the story in 3 parts, like I said. S, we, P. The reason why, if somebody starts a presentation with, hello, my name is Yvette van den Berg, I am working independently as a storyteller, I'm going to present to you today, blah, 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 blah. It's not necessarily the most interesting thing to do. It's because the biggest difference between information and story is that story starts with a setting. Show, don't tell, is a golden rule of mine. Show, don't tell. Like in a movie, I need to be able to see something in my mind's eye, something that I can be with you in the story. For instance, yesterday we had a presentation round and I was eavesdropping again, and a lot of presentations started with, I would like to, and there's nothing wrong with it because it's a presentation, it wasn't storytelling, but just to make it the difference clear, I am going to present to you this project, this is what we did, this is what happened after, this is what happened after that, this is what happened after that, that was it, thank you. And then there was this one person who came up and said, this one night a woman called me and asked us, would you like to sing with us here? And we did. And then the next year, we went again with a group of 40 people. And immediately everybody sat upright. Just because it started with, one night, this lady called me. This is a setting. I can see that. A night is clear to me. If you would have said, well, one day or some time ago, I would have kept Googling the yew tree. Because my brain cannot see some time ago. What is some time ago? Was it yesterday? Was it a year ago? Was it night? Was it day? Where was it? I cannot see it. So, when we start a story, we start with the setting. me starting this morning. I would like to take you back to an evening in 2013, at the end of the first day of training. Yes, my story was with more purposes than just introducing myself to you. It's also to now show you what I've been doing, because it was very much on purpose, of course. So create a setting. What I'll do in general, for now, by the way, is first talk you through the 3 parts. Then I'm going to ask one of you to tell me something, anything. And we will turn it into a story. So you can see what actually happens. Don't panic, don't start thinking I have to come up with something to tell the story. It'll work itself out, but then you know what we're doing. So show us, when was it, where was it, the senses, the tactile senses, what did you see, hear, smell, taste, touch? I need to see the image. Sonja's story about the founding and then the 2,000 people leaving the room without applauding, that's 2 stories in itself. One is us seeing in our mind's eye this full hall of people having just witnessed something beautiful and then being silent and getting up. It does something to us, I can see it. But the reason why they didn't clap is because they could see it. They had been creating an image in their mind based on the story that they've been hearing and experiencing and seeing. So this is extremely important. Give me something that I can stand next to you and also see. If I don't hear any questions, then I just move on. The reading part, I don't know why I keep making that sound, but it just happens. Is the middle part of the story, the body, and I need to know what happened. I need to know the emotions around it, and just for a remark, emotions is not the same as making drama. We have that tendency sometimes. It's not. It's just what was I thinking then? What was I feeling? Did I get sweaty hands? Was I nervous? Did I feel a flutter somewhere? Did I have goosebumps? Was it blank stare? All is fine. So what happened exactly? The emotions and the energy. So give me a sense of how you felt in general during this body part of the story. Take me by the hand. You have given me the setting. I am there with you. Now walk me through the events. Take your time for that. Here, I will immediately present you with a little bit of additional information, because you have to know that before we can move on to the last part, the peeing part. There are 5, I swear you will never forget this workshop ever again. What did you do? Storytelling and peeing was very important. Most important part of storytelling. So, there is 5 things that are narrative rules, laws, that I have to find somewhere in a story for it to be legally called a story. You're not allowed to call anything you write a story unless these 5 parts are in there. Not just these 5, it's not a chronological order, it just has to be in there somewhere. Number 1, it sounds so obvious, but I will show you what goes wrong often. It has to have a main character. Here we are again. I am going to tell you a story on the sensation of singing. Well, when you sing, you feel more cheerful. When you sing, you feel all kinds of benefits in your body, in your physiological system. When you sing, there's 2 things going horribly wrong with what I'm doing in terms of storytelling. 1, it's not a story, it's information. There's no setting whatsoever. There's no, I can create an image in my mind. When you sing, you feel happy. What does that look like? That's 1. Number 2, it does not have a character, a main character. Because I'm going to tell you a story. When you sing, you feel happy. And your brain goes, who, me? I never saw it before. What do you mean? You who? You, everybody? You will confusion, and people take out their phones and start Googling you. So if you tell a story, make sure there is a main character that can be anywhere. If you tell the story, then the main character is I. And then you think, yeah, but it shouldn't be about me. It should be about my audience. Now, the absolutely most interesting thing about storytelling is that as soon as you make it about you, it becomes becomes about me. Because I am in a different region in my brain, I will do it anyway. Here we are. So, this is going not to be a brain study, so everybody who knows something about brains might know that there's a little bit more to this particular story. But for us now, it comes in handy. So, you see the reptilian brain, the brown part. If you don't move your chair, I will stand away. Reptilian brain, it controls our basic instincts, our fight, flight, hunger, breathing. We don't have that much to do with the reptilian brain for storytelling. Sometimes, though, your audience has so much going on in their own life, no matter how good your story is, their reptilian brain will say, not now, not now. I have something else. Not you, it's their brain. Then we have the blue part, it's a big part, it's all around in our brain. It's the neocortex, it's called neocortex because it is the newest part of our brain. Reptilian is the oldest, neocortex is the newest. This is where all our rationalizing happens. This is where all the information comes in and goes out. This is also the part that listens critically to what you say. Do you recognize that you're listening to a speaker and then they start giving information and you know one thing to do not right? What do? Start Googling. They're done. Because they're giving out wrong information, so why would you listen to the speaker? Have you experienced these sort of similar situations? Yeah. Or what if somebody doesn't believe you and you have to convince them? That's hard work. Do you recognize this? That you are across from somebody and you know you're right, you are trying to convince them and they are trying to reason with you. It's exhausting. That's what happens in the neocortex. Now, there is a very interesting part in the limbic system, and this is where our emotions are being regulated. Well, what have we been saying? The main reason for wanting to tell a story is to give the other a sense of our experience, to let them feel what we feel. That means that in the brain you have to talk to that part, and not the information. But what have we been doing? We've been sending out information, and then we are surprised that people are not deeply touched. But it's logical, they can't be. It's a different part of the brain. The only problem with the limbic system is our speech system is not in there. So we have to literally make a translation from our feelings to our frames and formats before we can speak our story. That's what I'm going to teach you right here. Now, what did we do? We measured, with the stickers on your head and such, what happens to a brain when somebody starts a story with a once upon a time. Now, remember, that could also be, you know what I did yesterday? You know, I spoke to him this morning. By the way, all the things you do at coffee and lunch. Then the whole blue part kind of switches off. And the red part becomes active. And people literally start listening to you from their emotional system. So, if you want to know why the setting is so important, this is why. Because you say once upon a time. Blue part switches off, and then we know that all the decision making happens in that brain part as well. So if you can touch them there first, then later they will rationalize, but the decision has already been made.
You can touch also the red or maybe even the brown part. With children, for example, if you look at them and go, but even without this, I'm just showing you. Even very young kids, they react with something, I don't know, it's very impressive. You connect with the story.
In the end, everything is energy.
It's very
Very
animal.
Oh yeah. So you have power. You have power with this. Back to what I was saying about the me part. Because then you know that if I have people by their limbic system, because I gave them setting and I kept them, trapped them by the limbic system, as soon as I go too fast with this, people drop out of it and they're back in their rationalizing brain. They're lost. This is why you need these elements. You need a main character. As soon as you say you, then you feel so great and their rationalizing brain turns on. Who, me? Done. Number two, you have to have something of a wish or desire in the story. And I always make the comparison at this point with fairy tales. Because basically there is only one fairy tale, but we have made thousands and we still like to listen to me. Why is this? Because they all go a little something like this. Once upon a time, there was a princess, usually a long time ago, far away, in a castle, living there with her parents, king and queen. And everybody was doing well in this kingdom. The people, the animals, everybody was doing well. End of story. Right? Nothing will happen if there isn't a moment where the princess sometimes feels a bit lonely. Oh, now we are going somewhere. So it has to be, it doesn't have to be explicit. She would like to have, but it has to be in there somewhere. It has to be something that's missing, some desire, some wish. So she is, every now and then, is a bit lonely. Now, we did this very well. We made a setting. There was a princess in a castle with a king and queen, and we could see it in our mind's eye. Great. We gave something of a wish or a desire. She sometimes feels lonely. Now we come to the middle part. Some people go like this. A prince came along, they got married, and lived happily ever after. This is what we do. You know, people are unhappy. What could help? Singing could help. So we need to get people to sing. We did with our project, and then everybody was happy. I see some people going, oh, yes, that's how I've been telling some of my stories. That's the same thing as saying there was a princess in a castle, she was a bit lonely. I know what to do, she should get married. There came a prince and they got married. Good, huh? And the audience goes like, yeah. I know. Why? Because every story needs something of an obstacle. Let's call it a crisis or a dragon. It can't be just she was lonely, there was a prince, and we don't believe it because it's not how life works, and we are wired to know how life works. So as soon as I say the princess was a bit lonely, but there came a prince, and we were like, oh, but there was a dragon in front of her door. Look, we already know how this ends. As soon as I say there was a princess and she's a bit lonely, what's the first thing you think? Prince! We already know, but still we want to hear the story. Why? Because we know the next system. There has to be something of an obstacle. Now, the dragon is there. This is the next thing that can go wrong in the middle part of the story. Princess, fine, bit lonely, great. The prince, but he has to deal with the dragon in front of her door. Perfect. He did, they got married, lived happily ever after. And everybody goes, aww. This doesn't feel good, does it? And this is because so many times we forget to tell the exact thing that happened and what we were feeling and thinking. We need to know the solution. And we have to make it specific. And this is also in our storytelling where we can improve. Let's say we have seen that people can benefit from singing. We make a beautiful setting. We know that people can benefit from singing, so there is our wish or desire. Well, we of course have a challenge to get all these people together to actually come and sing, so there is an obstacle. See how small it can be? There was a challenge. How are we going to get these people to come and join? It's enough to introduce the obstacle. And then we say, either we did, it was beautiful, end of story, that doesn't work, or this is what we do. We have to think of how to get these people together. So we collected a team. I called that person, he called that person, they knew that person, and they knew a venue. So we gathered there, then we had our first meeting, then we phoned this organization, they had some other people, then we reached out into the community, and then after that, you are all already Googling yew trees. This is way too much information, way too much. You feel it? Well, if I would say, the challenge of getting these people together. So we knew we needed to collect a team, we needed a plan, and we needed a way to reach them. These are the people that worked tirelessly on our team. These are the platforms we decided to use. to get the attention of the people you wanted in there. And this is the way that they responded. And on January the 24th, there were 300 youngsters in our room singing. Much different, right? From my first, and then this, and then that, and then that. What I did here was a little trick that we call, it's just a trick I did. Did anybody know? No? I will give it a name so that you will never forget ever again. The threesome. What we need is a team, a strategy, and a way to reach these people. This also has a lot to do with how we perceive information in the brain. The three works tremendously well. Then what did I do? This was our team. This is the people who worked tremendously. So just one thing attached to this one thing. These are the platforms that we chose. And on January 24th, thanks to those platforms, 200 people were with us. So I kept it to those three things, those three parts of information, no more or less. And then you all panic because you think, but there was so much more to it. Yeah, and then we come back to the, wanting to tell everything. We don't have to. It doesn't benefit our audience. So use a threesome. Is my advice. Always works. But be specific. These were the people who worked tirelessly day and night. It's emotion and energy. It says something. The way to reach our audience. So I will make this stuff up right now. So you can too, because you actually have the information that you would like to tell. I know, I just make it up. So far so good? That's our middle part. Lastly, back to the fairy tale. Princess, bit lonely, prince came along, dragon in his way. I have to say some how and what, very specific, a solution. He, with one sweet movement, he took out his sword. He took out his sword, and with a deliberate stab, it went right through the heart of the dragon. So there's a lot of what exactly happened. There was probably a little bit more to it. In reality, it probably wasn't just one thing. He might have fought the thing for 15 minutes, but does it matter for my audience? It doesn't. This is what we storytellers call true or truthful. I can leave out 15 minutes of the fight if it doesn't suit my audience to hear that he first stepped left and then stepped right and then he stepped forward and then he got scratched. True or truthful. Leave the holy truth behind you when you walk out this door. And start to think in terms of what serves the audience in this structure. So, he stabbed the dragon and then all was well. What are you now feeling? Nothing. But and then, exactly. We know it is not finished because even though we know he now is going to marry the princess, we want to hear it. We already knew it, we still want to hear it. So we need the actual result. What did it lead to? Give me the ending. Otherwise we feel that something is missing. Just like with singing. If you are singing in, the D major and you don't come back to the, it's, you know what I'm talking about. It's annoying. That stuff too. So, that is also our peeing part, the most important part of all. What is the point of this story? Why are you telling me this? What is the connection of the conclusion of your story to why you created this image in my mind to begin with? If I create the image in your mind of the little bit lonely princess, I need at the end to connect that back to the lonely princess by saying, and she was never lonely anymore because she married the prince. Aww. So you have to do that with your story too. Ending with, and then the project was fantastic. It's most probably not enough. So come back to the beginning. Tell me why you told me this story. Do you want me to learn something from this? And that was the moment I realized the importance of singing. End of story. It can be as simple as that. That was the moment that I saw firsthand the impact of this project that we had. Can it teach me something? Can it, why? Clear? So far so good? Okay. After the break, we are going to work, of course, with your stories. We are now going to actually get you to go to work. So what I would like for you to do is during the break, during coffee of 30 minutes, is to already just think of this one specific yew tree story, let's call it that, with one of the reasons you had written down. What story would you want to tell, why, and just have some topic ready. Because after the break, I will just ask, well, who wants to try this structure out with me? Give me all the information you have, and I will turn it into a story together with all of you, so that we can get into it. Yes? Okay.